Oh, for muse of truth, that we could descend into the darkest hells of our own inventions. A kingdom, a stage, a cave.
You can have a sound of 1,000 voices calling your name. You can have the light of the world blind you, bathe you in grace. But I don't see so easily what you hold in your hands. 'Cause castles crumble, kingdoms fall and turn into sand. You can be an angel of mercy or give in to hate. You can try to fight it just like every other careless mistake. How do you justify? I'm mystified by the ways of your heart. With a million lies, the truth will rise to tear you apart. Whoa! No one gets out alive. Every day is do or die. The one thing you leave behind is how did you love?
Okay, bring my boom down to my mic so I know that I'm unmuted. I see good audio levels. And that meant that should have had an apostrophe. Hi, Hugh. Good afternoon. Yeah, we are live. The should have had the apostrophe in there. I how's my audio levels? Of course, I've only seen Hugh in the chat, and I'm asking on how my audio levels are. Okay, let's get that. I'm gonna disconnect from my phone. I'll crack open this caffeine here in just a moment. Um, okay, and I'm still catching up. I think I'm caught up on my email. I didn't really have anything coming in too much overnight. A little bit of there's one topic on the SIF news group that I need to go through and copy an EEPROM. There's a boot ROM on a future domain 800 card, and that's got the an older SCSI chipset. It's just prior to when the adapter was rebranded by IBM as the Patriot. Of course, it still existed in other forms with future domain, but I do have a boot ROM that's version 3 point something. Someone needs on their adapter because they don't have the boot ROM. And how is everybody doing this morning or this afternoon, as it were? Okay, a little quiet. And it may be that I'm just a little bit muted too. I am tired. I'm sorry. And I had an interesting dream. I don't know if I would call it a nightmare, but it's my subconscious preying on me. And I was back at work among employees, fellow employees of the place that fired me a little bit more than 2 months ago, 2 months, 2 years ago, 2 years and 2 months, 2 years and 3 months. And that's great to hear. That's great to hear that you're feeling good, Hugh. I hope to feel better soon. I've cracked open my Java Monster. drink. Yeah, maybe not good for my heart or anything like that. But wow, the firewall went up to 80 megabit of download for a brief period of time, whatever that was about. And it didn't last long, just a few seconds. And it just spiked. It didn't go through. And there's another one. I knew what was, maybe need to learn to see what is pulling bandwidth down. I'm seeing a real steady bandwidth out from here. I am guessing that it's about 4 or 5 megabit out. And, but yeah, back to my dream. I am having a lot of financial concerns prey on me right now in regards to my employment. And I've been chronically unemployed for the last over 2 years now, and it's really had its toll. It's allowed me a little bit of time to do what I need. In a lot of the occasions there, I haven't had the money to go through and, or sometimes the motivation to do what I need to do, get organized and get kind of cleaned up and things like that. And so, of course, tax time in the US, and that is what is preying on my mind a lot because I owe quite a bit of money that I don't really have. I'm almost dead broke, and I've got a lot of resources otherwise. I mean, I can start going through. There's a lot of non-IBM systems, clone level, even like Everex, XTs, and so like that I can go through, that I have stashed away. They're stored pretty good. I think they're in pretty good condition, have not been in operation throughout the years. There is some um, things that I can go through um, and try and alleviate some of the expenses that I have. Well, and things happen, and I think it makes I'm glad in a way for the learning experience, or the ability to understand that how much of employment and a job and just a motivation, having the factors in someone's life can uh, can influence them, and that we sometimes talk about marginalized people unfairly, um, people in the inner city. This is not even trying to attach a any sort of ethnicity to anything, although a lot of the time it has that factor involved. But we look down upon that, and people that are in our society that are not employed, are not, we just don't feel that they're productive members of society, and we don't realize the factors and influence that they may have, that they may not, just like me. I've tried for over 2 years to get back in the market, to get employed. It's difficult in my area. It is difficult from the place that I came from, and how they're regarded and how they interoperate with other places that do the IT field here locally, that make it harder that make the reputation of a place that ultimately fired me to get me out of the way for my seniority within the company, 22 years, to be able to promote a favorite employee that had much less time within the company than I did. I had to be moved out of the way so that they could go through and promote that person, among other factors. There's probably a lot of other factors that I was just on the outs. I'm not going to go in and consider this a manifesto video or do anything rash that in the news it's going to go through and they're going to hear a story to say, oh my gosh, this guy had gone through and posted some YouTube videos and where he was unstable in his mind. And um, so, but that can be very demoralizing. It gave me a new perspective and understanding the factors around us and how we feel as a person. I've always been able to provide for my loved ones, for my family, and have tried to give the best um, conditions for their lives by doing everything I could, even to the point where being very busy with employment for a number of years, that I didn't have the other abilities, and apologize that I was maybe cold or distant at points with people, trying to go through and work and do. And that's always been those noble aspirations on my part, that I was employed to provide, not even for necessarily for myself, but was employed um, to provide for the people that I loved. And that's reciprocal as well. I mean, I have still a number of good friends and family and acquaintance around me. Um, yeah, and ageism in our IT industry really needs to be addressed. That we get through, and in fact, one of the things I'm talking about with change in the video here is I've got to go through and to get in a better place to be employed. And so this may actually be the last that you see of the beard. That I've got to go through and clean up my appearance and make it look like I'm not so old, that I am treated better in interviews and have the ability um, to not encounter as much bias, and how a lot of companies, in particular in IT, are into ageism. That they go through and they just believe a factor of someone that's old, like me. And I said for years, and this is when my grandparents are probably, one set of my grandparents were in their 60s and 70s, and I said, man, they just talk about being old. They seem like, they do old things. Um and I thought that I'd never get into the conditions to say, if I don't get in a frame of mind to feel old, I won't be old. And I've learned in the time since, of course, there's other factors. There's a lot of things that can make you feel old, and in a lot of ways. And so it's Well, and that's what I really find amazing, that there's so much need for cybersecurity. There's so much need for IT out there. I'm talking about businesses that don't necessarily need a full-time IT person, but they need definitely a consulting, a consultation. There's a lot of places that um, businesses and facilities, hospitals, banks that need a cybersecurity aspect to avoid ransomware and other things going on. And I'm going to take a screenshot of my firewall. It's right at about 4 megabit. Uh, but yes, there's a lot more need for IT and professionals, men and women, in those technical fields to go through and improve a lot of aspects that are very lacking in an IT infrastructure that we've gone through, certainly within the last 20 to 25 to 30 years. And I've joked around before to say, I went into boot camp and we stenciled our duffel bags, our sea bags, with our social security number on the flap. So we're traveling through the airport. Anybody looking at that bag that we're using to move around has our social security number. It's even grim that prior to events like Desert Storm, conflict that service members went into, they even tattooed social security or other identifiers on different appendages, body parts, arms and legs, to basically connect the dots or be able to identify their parts if they died or were seriously injured. Hey, that arm mixed in with the others is mine. But we were in different time, but where we weren't, we didn't understand how people could take advantage, or people started taking advantage of that lower security levels. You could use your granddaughter's name as a password, or 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the thought that people weren't motivated to get into and access your account. Yeah, but it's hard. I have to go through and I have to work for somebody. I can't go through. I don't have. It's going to be too much of a challenge for me to go through, especially with what exists right now. And there's angles I could get into: security camera installations, dash cam installations, that even computer repair that can be a lot more piecemeal, network installations. But that tends to be around here. That tends to be a little bit more piecemeal, or that I will have to put a bunch of work into it for a pretty minimalistic return. And I may be forced to do that level. I may be forced to go through and just do as piecemeal of work that I can. And I should have already been involved in that, really, over time. I have been a little bit. I probably should have been involved more and working more towards not just taking a little bit more time for myself and relaxing, and even the endeavors like I've done here, where there's not a whole bunch of financial return for a YouTube channel that is relatively a low level like this. Although I have a bunch of fun with it, and I enjoy doing this stuff, and I know when that enjoyment gets affected that I get to a place where I may not be able to do that it's not a valuable use of my time. That's what makes me feel depressed, and it takes the enjoyment out of what I'm able to experience. Um, and so, yeah, nothing's off the table, but it's shocking to me in a lot of areas that I may have to go through and even get out of the IT industry to ultimately survive, to be able to go through and to do something else. And that baffles me for the level of knowledge that I have, the abilities I have. I can't understand that I would have to leave IT to do something else. IT is supposed to be the particular aspect and the much needed stuff, and I realize, yeah, if I were half my age and the job was halfway across the country or something else like that, I could do that. I can't do that at this point. And it may come down to being a little bit more forced as well for that I can't move. I'm still in a mortgage. I still want to go through and have the financial things, the financial structure that I've set up for myself over the years of being able to live in a place and not be having to go through. And I have to maintain that household. I just can't move at this point, a wife, not much more of any level of kids or anything else that I would have to move around. But it's moving that household because I wouldn't want to get into where I'm getting a less of a salary and still having to pay for two households to be able to survive like that. And yeah, there's a lot of other things. I love to do a lot of so-called charity work or to go through and be of help to people without a financial aspect to it. And that makes me feel complete. And as I open the song, I think that we're more judged in the end. I'm not talking about any higher power. I'm talking about just collectively in our society. I'd like to hope that we're judged on how do we love? How have we gone through and been towards other people and doing the things. There's Tree and Leaf by Niggle that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote late in his life, that he was worried about being able to finish out lifelong endeavors, his writing, before he died. He talked about the man Niggle, a painter, preparing to go on a long journey, which is death, and having his neighbor pester him with needing chores done and things like that. And, him doing those with also the other involved painting that he was trying to finish before he went on this long journey, this very involved painting. And you can see a lot of parallels that he was writing about his life. But I enjoy getting out there and doing volunteer work as well. I need to do a lot more of it because I really um, and perhaps I'm a little bit bad in that regard that I haven't related or haven't been in a position to go through and do as much charity work and to do um, I'm maybe I need to be better organized on my time back when and not going through and just with my nose to the grindstone and working and things like that. But I I had that dream and last night of back among my fellow employees and how I was perceived, I guess, there in a meeting and how I felt was kind of interesting. It's just, I, it's my subconscious preying on my mind. And so I, I hope to go through and get in a better state of mind, especially. I just felt so tired and I felt it was like it's a chore to go through and to get everything ready. I've got my recognized time on Saturdays that I do this live stream and I like the schedule. Um, but I've got to go through and I've got to do preparations for it and, have things set up. I'm trying to get other studio setups going and yeah, finding a job is a full-time job. Um, and the unfortunate thing is there's not any real safety net in our society. I've already gone through and I've expended a lot of that. And in fact, in ways I've been lucky, it's been during times of COVID because there's been a lot of increased um, benefits that have come down from our society to try and handle a lot of the COVID related issues that I've received a lot more in a longer period of time um, than what I would have otherwise. But yeah, it goes through, and really for that, I mean, it's going through, and of course, a lot of an ideal nowadays too would be a remote job, and I'm very capable in doing that. I have enough discipline to go through and be productive no matter where I am. If the job is has the ability to be solved remotely, I'm able to do the remoteness. The is the an easy thing for me. Whether the skill set and things like that of the job, well, I need to get the closest application to the abilities that I have. The but a remote job would be ideal. It'd be away from the finite job numbers around here. The backwater, a little bit of the backwater tech side. That local employment is not as great of an opportunity for me. And I've been applying for online stuff as well. And I realize there, the nice thing is the appearances don't go through and work against you as much in those instances. Although a lot of time they do want a FaceTime that you have that that meetings maybe and things like that you have the video going like this that they can very much see your appearance um, but the it's not as relevant sometimes for how the appear. I mean, you're a little bit more of the remote work. You're known by the work that you do, but even a lot of the structure there is just not set up, and it's not ideal. It doesn't take a lot of human factors, and in a lot of instances, I don't have the certifications or as much of a skill set that I would like. I may have a little bit of knowledge based on what I've touched in the past, but I don't have certifications and other things that the industry requires. And it's appreciated for everyone saying, you can do this. It's just one step at a time. You've got the support. You've got um, the providing inspiration, motivation, things like that to do it. And I have to let that sink in so I don't get overwhelmed a little bit. And I just feel that I ultimately feel that our society in general does not provide enough of a, and I don't want to say safety net or assistance or anything else like that, put any context or framing on that. But I think we could be a lot better as a society um, in many ways. Uh, yeah, it's and I should feel proud of accomplishments I and going through and doing things. Um, and I do, and that's been even more on a personal basis, and that some of that stuff even continues today of going through. I've been glad to been in this environment to where I'm still learning primarily about the IBM systems. We're discovering a lot of stuff to aspects of how a lot of systems operate. And in fact, I had some stuff on the side here that if it was going to go technical, I would go through and show even a lot of my mentality. I did a few videos this week, stopped relatively early. In fact, I did some that there was times I did a couple videos in a day, and then other days that I didn't do any. That's just been how it's been going and how I've been feeling though a lot of the time too. Um, but I've gotten thinking on and the nice thing that I have a lot of spare boards and things like that to go through and study. I've got multimeters to go through and do continuity checks and things like that on things. Here's the PC convertible planer. I just have to get in the idea of where it needs to be on the screen. And I always worry, I got to get a box. I'm always worried about that little flange for the RAM because the memory boards are going this way. I need to go through and protect this and not have this so much of going through and moving this around as much as I do. But I go through and I'm finally going to get some pinouts for the PC convertible. And this is the serial parallel board. And I realize I have the kind of the phase difference going on between the camera views. There's the serial port and the parallel port side. We've seen me go through and doing the zip drives to the PC convertible. And I got thinking too, this one I've got the I intended to bring it off to bring it into view before on the bench before I got going on the video. But I have the internal modem on it, and elsewhere I have the external or the back big slice of the portable printer. But I thought that the internal modem and that thermal printer are more uncommon and probably harder to find supplies, less conventional, because we can talk about the aspect of a printer port. Certainly, if you had the PC convertible today and you wanted to go through and print something of a lot of, in more of a modern context, you would use the I/O board to connect up a parallel printer to this port to be able to print, rather than using that portable printer on the back. That thermal printer, you'd have to find thermal paper. You have to go through, and there's so much more aspects. For the internal modem of the PC convertible goes up to 1200 baud. And it's the Bell standard. It's not a Hayes command set. And so if you were to go through, and the neat thing, like RetroTech Chris has done, is they've worked with the Wi-Fi adapters connecting to the serial port of the PC convertible. And if you had to connect like a modem, a dial-up modem, to a PC convertible, or use a dial-up modem on a PC convertible, you would probably go through and get the I/O board and connect up a relatively quicker modem than a 1200 baud the 1200 baud internal modem. So I'm viewing that these I/O slices, the parallel and serial port, are easier to locate. They're more available, and they're more, the ability to use these is a lot higher than the built-in devices or the conventional devices that are on the PC convertible. But in my little stacking video, I tried to go through and stack more than one of these. I tried to put a second one on and thinking that the PC convertible would go through and work with it, and it didn't. And when you think about the modifications, it's funny that this has a single serial port and a single parallel port at an I/O address that IBM designed that is very easy to modify. Address line 9, if it's inverted, goes through and sets this board from using the primary addresses to using the secondary addresses. And there's also interrupt request lines that have to be on the bus connector and things like that. They are. But it'd be easy to go through and modify this board for the secondary address to be able to have two of these adapters on the PC convertible. And the PC convertible should be able to go through and set it up. The BIOS listing shows that it should. The little flow charts shows that it should. Whether I've got to investigate whether in practice of whether that is possible. And the bigger issue with this is they go through and they multiplex the address and data lines on this bus connector. And so just for size, they make it a little bit harder to go through and break that data out, separate the address and data lines. You have to do the decoding. And this has got some chips on there that I need to go through and this ASIC chip, I need to go through and just investigate a little bit more of what that is. And so I'm working on that aspect. And I wanted to show, I haven't seen, I've had a little bit of communication with Major Tom. I haven't seen him on chat recently, but I wanted to go through and show, and I always intended to, I want to go through and scan the stuff that I'm working on, and get it online before I do the video on it. So on video, I can go through and say, hey, the scan material that I'm covering here is already online. Here's the address for it. I have some fairly neat manuals that I think Major Tom will appreciate, as well as many others that I need to scan. I've got them off to the side here. There's a lot of stuff I need to scan and work on that. And that takes some time too. Let me get... So a lot of this is, excuse me, already understood. But here we have the ECAs, Engineering Change Announcements. And I even got prompted this last week, and I didn't really rate it as any sort of detriment to them, but they asked what an ECA was, and I had to say, what's an engineering change announcement? There's all the announcements of relevance. The ECA 2, 8550/60 fixed disk adapter card. They're talking about the MFM, system board connector change. I wasn't even aware of that one for the one that I've been focused on the past. There's your ECA 023 for the MAL 25 Arrhenius display characters. Excuse me. But I've got to go through. Scanning this is not as critical because a lot of these are already, a lot of these ECAs are already documented. That's ECA 032, SCSI adapter. Of the things, positions, areas on the board you have to check. It's nice it does have the diagrams, whereas the ECAs that are online just have, a lot of the time, they just have the text of the engineering change announcement. So that is a minor book for ultimately scanning. Which one do I want to get out next? Well, let's get out this one, because this has some relevance. And I think people notice when I get talking about the technical stuff too, it gets my mind off of other issues. So there's this. Personal System 2 hardware maintenance reference. In fact, let me go through and I want to get, let me get the internal webcam off. Even though that's helpful, I mean, it just lets me know that I have the full screen to work with here. And I like the position of my monitor now that's just off of, when I'm turned like this, it's right ahead of me. I'm able to see, it's of course a good ways off to the left on the screen, on the camcorder screen. but that's the reason I want that out of view. I want to have a monitor. I mean, truly, it's a monitor to show. It's to monitor what I'm displaying, a what I'm wanting seen on camera at the time. And these are still pretty good condition. Nice box, but so there's your general information. Okay. Here's your diagnostic information for non-microchannel computers. And it goes through and shows symbology and things like that we see, this animation that we see of the set time and date, of going through and pressing F1 to continue or inserting a diskette. All the animation, non-loadable diskette. We've seen this on the convertible where the diskette comes out and breaks into pieces. Power on password. Quite a bit. Fixed disk diagnostic menu. And of course, with a section that has the diagnostic information for non-microchannel computers, there is a section for diagnostic information for microchannel computers. And that's about the same size. I apologize, I'm not showing a whole bunch of these of what they first edition March of 1990. But I plan to go through and scan these. There's your personal system, Model 25, hardware maintenance reference. And going through and doing things on the Model 25. Incompatible adapters. Operating requirements for the power supply. Tools. How to go through and to open up the Model 25. We may even have some of these graphics on the Ardent tool, and certainly the ones that are there that we don't have should be put up. And I'm not calling anyone out on that aspect. I'm just trying to say, or even defining what should be at the Ardent tool and what should not be. But if we have documentation on these systems that to go through and, in fact, there's the tabs for the CRT, plastic tabs. I want to show these for inserting the memory modules, how to go through it and insert them. Just a whole bunch of detail there to these systems. There's your Model 30 hardware maintenance reference. And these have bindings on them. I mean, it's going to be a little bit going through and scanning them. It's going to be, it's going to take a little bit of time. But I need to go through and do these. In fact, I've had these books for years ultimately. Just dug them out about a month back, set them aside, and then pulled them out again to bring them up here. And I've had them set aside for a couple weeks up here without going further with them. I mentioned them offhand to Major Tom, but I didn't show what they were. Some of these diagrams exist in other places, of course. And that's a type. Okay, that's the 3026 board anyway. Oh, this is even great. Look at that. In fact, I thought of the cables here lately, the diskette drive cables. All the different ones of where the pins are, how the folds are. It doesn't have the lengths of these, but although I've got some example cables out that I even had a few of these set aside that I wanted to go through and start measuring and seeing how, documenting how they're set up. And I don't know if that one has, yeah, it does have an FRU. Even the ECA levels or EC levels. So I had put my camcorder. I had a few of those around that's going to go through and start measuring and documenting and things like that. Otherwise, here's like a Model 60 or Model 80 diskette drive, the old style. And here's oh, this is even the newer style Model 80 reply, and even this would be helpful for documentation of how these strands are peeled off to be reorganized. For the little shorty cables. And that's like a model 3026, I think. Something to that level. Where it's a very short pin, the 40-pin connectors on the planar, and then going to the 34-pin for the diskette drive. So I've got some of those around. I need to go through and probably a lot more organization. And what I'd like to say is I'd love to be rich, that I'd have everything else taken care of, every other factor, that I could just focus on doing stuff without worrying about money. And of course, I guess it's the whole thing of life probably is to get in that condition. Model 50, hardware maintenance. And so some of these areas may be a little bit more of a teaser for once I scan this stuff, rather than kind of all showing it all now. I just want to I want to push myself into showing it so people know I have it, and that way I'm forced to go through and scan it, and to in fact, we've had a lot of talk on the 55SX here lately, and I found a picture of the old so-called cockroach planer. I put that online. I need to get it over to if anybody if like it wants to Major Tom needs to look at it, and he's got Model 60. There's even been some questions on the Model 60 here lately. And wow, even the 65SX. I guess if this was late enough. The carrying handle. Model 70. So I know I'll get people clamoring for this. In fact, like I say, Major Tom, I know he's very interested in stuff. The P70. That's been on the Facebook group a bunch of times. Oof. Opening the rear cover. Battery and speaker assembly. No P75. Then it goes to the Model 80. And after the Model 80, that is it for the models that are covered here. Here you've got options and adapters for microchannel. Here's about your internal modem. We're talking about modem speeds. What optimal voltages are and things like that. And that's loose leaf. That's easier to scan for me. And these are half page. These are the 5.5 by 8.5 in inches. Sorry for all the metric people out there. I don't know what half of an A4 sheet is called. Unlike the European side. Repair information. There's non-microchannel options and adapters. Even has the PS2 mouse. Connector information. Okay. PS2 system 2 displays. Or personal system 2 displays. Tilt swivel. Removal. Things like that. So there's the hardware maintenance references that I need to get scanned. I wanted to show. March 21st of 1990. And the Personal System 2 hardware interface technical reference. And this is the one I know Major Tom will be really interested in. There's your section on microchannel architecture. These are loose pages, so this will be easy to scan. I don't know if this has been scanned previously, or probably a lot of the information exists for this. Bus ownership. I was even surprised. There was a recent video from Dave Plummer that he has a 55SX that he's trying to get working, and he's got the diskette drive connectivity issues kind of affecting him. The diskette drive breaking that he was going to, but he went through had a recent video on the different bus types. I recommend it to go through and see it. Yeah, even look at that for the technical. Here's all your CAD level for your, and I've seen these diagrams, I think, online before, but they show where to have external, permissible edge connector location, all the bus, all the measurements of what board should have, of what the connectors, dimensions critical to function. So a lot of drawings. Here's your 32-bit side. 32-bit. Yeah, it just has, what is that? Oh, connector dimension, a 32-bit with max memory. Okay. Connector common detail. Here's even showing how the tabs and brackets are set up. Typical adapter assembly. But just all the, the little plastic blue tab that's on a microchannel adapter. And there is all your, I mean, that's a 3D printing kind of thing, to where having that detail of being able to put a device like that and being able to 3D print it. I'm finally looking at with some detail at these. There's the front tab, but that is the that's all the things to be able to make more parts in 3D printing aspect, and that should interest a lot of people. I need to look at chat here eventually to see what the reactions are. Oh, that's the bracket. And of course, there's already been development to 3D print brackets in 3D printer, but that's the bottom, the metal tab, because you have the screw, retaining screw on that end of those metal shields, and it gives all the dimensions to those. Adapter bracket. So yes, I'm going to go through and get these scanned. There's your power. They have formulas. Thermal, electromagnetic. The comment of the week that I saw on that Dave Plummer video, they talked about, somebody made the comment, well, microchannel was mostly from a marketing angle, that IBM could lock in and get, royalties on microchannel and for all the companies that built it. And they didn't talk about all the technical aspects. And microchannel, I think, was a little bit more planned long term than what this particular comment. There's your x86 instructions and decoding, paging mechanisms. A lot of that is known. So this might be really interesting. System board I/O controllers. Insert the hard tab page labeled System board I/O controllers in here, and then discard this page. I guess I don't have the tab. Oh, and then it goes into, okay, so direct type 1. Here's your. So as I say, I think Major Tom will just love this. If otherwise, if there's some information that's provided that is not out there yet or needs to be determined. There's some registers. So yes, I need to scan this. There's your mode, register, extended commands, extended operation, interrupt controller, type 1. Some of this is well enough known. Programming the interrupt controller. Okay. Oh, there's even diskette drive controller. And they do things, clock rates. Keyboard and auxiliary devices. Oh, it even has some penned in by whoever. So there's your connector converters. Yeah, that's helpful for. And I'm encountering a couple pages that look like they're a little bit crinkled and things like that. Keyboard and auxiliary device controller. Again, type 1. There's your controller status. Register for your keyboard and auxiliary. There's some of your signaling. maybe getting up to the Ben Eater level for documenting the PS2 protocols, PS2 keyboard, serial port controllers, type 1 and 2, that's pinouts. Video subsystem for type 1. I'm sure a lot of this information is known by now. I wonder if it covers any of, this is probably VGA, but there might be MCGA in here. I don't know. Here's your block diagram. Modes of operation. I'm going to look through. Has your keyboard layouts. See, so there's all your timings and connector. That's been marked up a little bit. Yeah, okay. So this is probably a good place. Before I look at the chat window to see card selected feedback, system board setup, system board enable setup register. And again, a lot of that information is known and documented. Major Tom has a lot of this on the Ardent tool, or it's been covered in the SIF news group. Oh, there's your system board, adapter identification. System board block diagram. Here's kind of the overlay for the what they wanted the system boards to be. Okay. System memory maps. System board IO address map. Match memory type 2 implementation. There's probably some technical details to that. But yeah, that's what I have to also scan. This is individual pages. So this will be and I don't trust my automatic document feeder for these pages. I still do switching by hand, which can take some time. And I haven't drank any. Oh, half of an A4 sheet is an A5. That is very handy for me to learn. Okay. Yeah, and so going through and addressing previous chat comments, Hugh says, in my country, you have to show that you have been applying for work in order to get money. I've lost count years ago of how many applications I have made. The U.S. system, by and large, is tied to the same thing. You've got to at least and it differs at a state level. You have to go through and do so many job searches per week, have relative proof of those that you can show, and it lasts for jobless benefits last only a certain amount of time. Yeah, and I really will go through and take that the suggestion talking to local school district and government offices. Yes, in particular, I am a veteran, and I look for every opportunity that gives me. In fact, I've gone through and I've applied for VA programming, VA program, Veterans Administration program in the United States that goes through and is in reaction to COVID, believe it or not. They should have had this in place before, but it's retraining veterans. It's a special COVID program. And the ironic thing for me there is you have to be unemployed. You have to have no GI Bill benefits remaining. And GI Bill, for people that are not aware and outside the United States, GI Bill is when you first go in the service, they ask you, well, do you want to contribute towards the GI Bill? You chip in at the time before it was $100 a month in your first year of service. Then when you get out, they match that money pretty much 3 or 4-fold to go through and pay for a lot of stuff to and they don't go up a lot of time into postgraduate stuff and everything else. They can't use it, but typically for university level, for college, for a 4-year degree. I don't know about so much of a technical school, but that is what the GI Bill is focused on. But I'm trying to apply for a program right now that retrains for IT for unemployed veterans that don't have any GI Bill remaining. The interesting thing for me there is it's retraining a lot of veterans to come into the IT field as a different employment option than what they may have had in the past. In other words, they may have been a truck mechanic, and probably truck mechanic stuff is still very relevant in today's economy, but going through and it's viewed as a vocational switch, going to another job field and training that person in the IT field. And I have a lot of the IT background as it is right now, to go through and I've built on that, but that's going to go through and do certifications and other things besides going through and doing money for that education. And I think that will be helpful. So definitely I'm planning to look into that. I've looked into a little bit into the government level at our county level and things like that. Not so much in the state. We're in a section of the state where it's not really a whole bunch of state level government stuff. But yes, I am kind of trying to focus on that, um, and that's the bad thing about advertising for workers on the usual channels, um, like the USA Jobs website and things like that, which is primarily focused at government jobs. Um, a lot of time that may not even be advertised in a local area for existence of a job opening being that, and it's knowing where to look online anymore for how those jobs are advertised. And so and you can work on older equipment, which the younger folk don't always want to work on. They want the latest and greatest. And so the older equipment, I mean, that has up and downsides as well. There's not really any modern context to some of the stuff. In fact, a lot of time, let me tell you how an IT job around here is. The true definition of an IT position that we have very limited job openings, but typically in the interview, it's what is Active Directory? And I went through and I was system administrator and assistant network administrator before Active Directory was a thing. Um, we had Windows NT domains. We had primary domain controllers and backup domain controllers. And we had a bunch of NT domains that we had to get to do trust between those domains for the aspect of just getting them to work with each other, different disparate NT domains to work together. And we had to do that from the level that we couldn't just Google that information. We had to go through and, as I say, RTFM, and determine how to go through and establish domain trust and things like that. So it was more of a learning experience. And then when Windows 2000 came on the scene, all of a sudden it's Active Directory. And we had to migrate to Active Directory. And so I have that early experience. Well, if they ask in the interview about Active Directory, they want to know Active Directory. They don't care about that background of NT domains. It's no longer relevant. There's not any system out there that uses that stuff anymore. Even among the old military systems, the joke about how many Windows XP systems are still deployed in a military aspect. But it's Active Directory is out there. It's they're not worried about that older skill set. And of course, I've gone through and I've forgotten with time a lot of going through. If you ask me how do you set up an NT domain trust, I would go through and Google it for one, but that wouldn't be a secondhand nature for me to know. I do know a lot of the principles of Active Directory and what they are, and I'm able to satisfy that. But that's why I'm trying to relate with the another aspect would be a dot matrix printer. And yeah, there may be a government office that they do carbon copies and things like that. They have multi-layer tractor feed paper or something else like that they have to use a dot matrix printer. But then again, most of the places now have migrated to a laser printer. It's like the copy machine, the networked copy machine that I have off to my left. If they want two sheets of something, they print twice. They don't use a carbon anymore. They, so there's a different mentality. There's not going to be, well, you've got to fix this dot matrix printer because that's the only way that we have to print carbon, our multi-feed sheets. And I don't think it's going to be to some level of our society now too, where it's the electronics and replacing stuff is not so much, hey, go over and repair this laser printer. It's going to be more of install this option on the laser printer, install this this jet direct card, or swap out the one that's broken, or the jet direct card breaks and they're not able to isolate it down to a particular level, and they just want to replace the whole printer for that part that could ultimately be fixed, but just they don't have the level of knowing that anymore. I've gone through and I've reflowed those jet direct cards in the kitchen oven to repair one of them. And now I have a electric kiln, that I can control the temperature a little bit better that I would do it in, rather than a kitchen oven. But I do have a lot of those skill sets, and I appreciate John's story saying that being able to breeze through any IT program. And that is the sad thing, is I didn't get certified for a 22-year long job because certification was viewed as that you were going to move on to other jobs, which I should have done anyway. It was treated, you didn't need certifications on the job. It was certifications cost money. Why do certifications unless you're interested in personal goals? And I should have been a lot more focused on that, on going through, leapfrogging around a little bit, doing that aspect to moving around the industry a little bit, than staying in place for 22 years. And you begin to be taken for granted going through that length of time as well with the place. And they may look upon it as there's a younger hard charger that they want to get in a management position, that they feel you're too old, or they don't like you for other reasons. That sets you up, and then you got outside that job and you don't have any certifications to your name, you can't go through to the other aspect I got to pick up is low voltage cabling. The state of New Mexico requires you to have an ES7J if you're doing low voltage cabling, like network cables, telephone cables, coax cables. Amazingly, like Tom Lawrence up in the state of Michigan, Detroit specifically, he does a lot of cabling as well as his other network stuff. And he said on his channel that the state of Michigan does not require any certifications to do low voltage cables. I've been ES7J qualified in the past, but I need to get that certification back. And the state of New Mexico does do it, where if you have an IT shop, a cabling company, you have various workers that are running cable, that only the top individual or someone in the shop has to be certified for ES7J. And the thought is, just like an electrician, that they're going through and reviewing the other work, or they're passing that knowledge on. So in the business environment, they're very lax. On an individual basis, if you're out there on your own doing low voltage cabling installations, you have to be ES7J certified to do it. And of course, you can do cabling at your own home, but going through and running any commercial um, network cabling, and a lot of that, a lot of the qualifications is knowing where to put fire block. So if you have an instance like a fire breaking out, it's not going through that bigger hole that you've drilled to get the cable through a wall. You have fire block putty that is there and can block can compartmentalize any issue like that. So yeah, I know I have a lot of the knowledge, but I've got to go through and I've got to focus on a few key areas. And that, even the low voltage cabling, if you look upon it as, if I am in a place that I have a ES7J and able to do cabling, they don't have to contract out for that. I can realize that there may be a big job that they're recabling something, but if they have to do a network cable run, they don't have to contract out for that. I can go over there and I can, as long as I have the materials, which I do, I can string a cable and save a place money because I have that ability. I'm able to do network cabling. I don't even have to look on color coding or anything else. I've got all the tools, the crimpers, the poles, the fish tape to pull wires, to pull cable through attics and things like that on my own, and it's a value added service I could do. Yeah, it's all about the certifications at some level, although you do encounter people that talk about, well, certifications are only good up to a certain level. Yeah, and IT security, and I don't want to minimize that because there is some real intense skill sets in there that are very technical. When you talk about competing on a national stage of blocking a hacking group from getting into your equipment, there is some very critical things and some knowledge and skill sets that you have to have for those instances that I don't want to minimize. And unfortunately, a lot of time you're trapped in, you have a particular level of an operating system or a certain brand of like firewall or networking equipment that has a vulnerability on it. And can be taken advantage of, and you all of a sudden you have a limitation. How do I work with this equipment to get it secured when the whole series of network switches or something else had this vulnerability in it or something else? So there's a lot of skill sets there, but so this live stream has gone on for about an hour and a half. I think it's been a very good live stream. I've enjoyed the chat. I've been all the people that have contributed here, although I don't mind people lurking and learning. They just want to lurk back and see what goes on. I feel at this point in the stream, after an hour and a half, I feel better than I did going into it at the beginning. It's gone through, I've been able to leave through some manuals and get into technical details that has taken my mind off of other issues. And sure, I'll probably later on today, I get back into some of the aspects that I do have to deal with, but it has brought up my spirits a little bit for the for this portion, and knowing that there are friends and people out there and people that are involved and share an aspect that I do and recognize the human side that I want to provide to this and offer, where they offer words of advice and help and detail that they have found helpful and that they know that will help me and others. I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate the community taking the feet of the camera again. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to wrap up the live stream. You've seen where I'm trying to put pressure on myself to be able to scan some manuals and the other things I'll be working on and providing some video content that I need to work on. And I'd like to have those manuals scanned even before I do the video. And that way I can say in the video, here is where those manuals are. Not it's going to take a week or two for me to scan those. And so stay tuned and stuff like that. I want to be able to have people can get instantaneous access to those that information I scan once I do it. And along with you, I want to thank everyone in the chat. I know I appreciate the people that have tuned in, and if I don't acknowledge by name or they go by another moniker, that's fine. But you know that you have my appreciation, and I do appreciate Hugh tuning in and going through what I know is probably some difficulties or some roadblocks, such as hearing and things like that, that I try and go through and enunciate my words enough on camera to where he is able to gain value from that as well. So I'm just going to say that this is IBM Museum, and that's all I have for now. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you. I will see you in videos later this week and the live stream on next Saturday. Bye-bye.